Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to share with you how you could use Scrum to be more productive at work. Recently I passed my PSM1 exam, which stands for Professional Scrum Master Level 1, after studying the Scrum framework, so I've been thinking about how I can use it in my work. And if delivering value incrementally sounds productive to you, then join me in this video as I walk you through the Scrum framework. And don't worry if you haven't heard of it before, because I just learned it too and it's fairly simple to understand. So first off, what is Scrum? The word literally refers to the rugby formation where rugby players interlock their arms head to head, facing down against the other team and try to get the rugby ball. It is actually a software development framework, and the co-founders decided to call it Scrum, and it was written by two software developers called Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. I hope I pronounced their names correctly, and they condensed the Scrum framework into a 14-page PDF to teach people how to use it. And what it really means to me, basically, is that it is a theory of describing how teams should really work together to deliver value, and if we follow the theory, it promises to deliver the benefits of happier, more productive teams at work. If you heard of Agile, then learning Scrum will also make you agile, as the Scrum framework is built on Agile principles. In fact, the co-founders of Scrum were also part of the 12 software developers who came up with the Agile Manifesto, which is simply a list of core values about how to develop software better. And it still exists in a very old school looking website because it's really as simple as that, and you can check it out as I link it in the video description below. The Agile ways of working have been widely adopted in the business world because it's fairly easy to use and it simply works. And it's not just limited to software development, as I previously thought it's only an IT thing, but it's actually applicable in a wide range of projects and domains because of the universally applicable concepts. So it's great to learn Scrum because it's probably one of the most popular ways of working according to many market research surveys, and it's great to learn something that is highly in demand today. Many books and guides have been written to interpret the original 14-page PDF Scrum guide, and what I'm about to show you is based on my personal interpretation of Scrum on how we can work more productively in a corporate setting. And there are many nuances to it which I won't be able to go through entirely in this video, but let me share with you the simple version of it for beginners. The Scrum framework can be simplified into the 3-5-3 model, which stands for 3 roles, 5 events, and 3 artifacts. So let's first talk about roles. We all have a manager, and our manager also has his or her own manager, and let's call that person our big boss. So basically, our big boss mixes around with many people up there, and those people are so-called stakeholders. So our big boss would define what needs to be done in our team to satisfy them, and our manager then plans the work, who then guides us on how to do it. In Scrum theory, there are 3 roles called the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developer. In the hierarchy just now, our big boss can be regarded as the product owner who represents the interests of all the stakeholders that he or she manages. Next is our manager, who can be regarded as the Scrum Master, who runs the project on a daily basis and coaches people on how to do their jobs more effectively. And finally, it comes to developers, and we are usually at that level when we first start out in our careers, as we get the nitty-gritty tasks done. To work productively, everyone should take on one of these roles and stick to their roles and responsibilities carefully. You can read the Scrum Guide for the full responsibilities of each role, but here is an overview of it, and there are some terms here which I will describe next. One caveat is that in Scrum, there's actually no hierarchy, like there's no someone who's bigger or more important than others. Every role is equally important, but in reality, we have to live with some form of corporate hierarchy. Next, when it comes to meetings, we all have to attend many meetings, and some are admittedly more productive than others. In Scrum, there are 5 types of events, and 4 of which are actually meetings that we should have for more productive work. The first is the definition of time that we actually do work, called the sprint, which is a fixed length of time of doing work, usually 1 month or less. It is not a meeting per se, but in simple terms is our usual time frame of quantifying work, and we usually break up a project into months or sprints. Second, sprint planning. This is the type of meeting that should be done at the start of every sprint, and for every month long of sprint, there should be at most 8 hours of sprint planning. We're probably familiar with this kind of meeting already, as usually at the start of every project or at regular intervals of the project, there is this massive meeting where everybody comes together to discuss what we hope to achieve and how we plan to achieve that. And third, the daily Scrum. This is a daily 15 minutes event where all the developers come together every day to inspect their progress and to discuss any problems that they are facing. In simple terms, this can actually be our daily meeting where everyone sort of reports to work and discuss what they are going to do for the day. Fourth, the sprint review. This is a 4 hours meeting at the end of every sprint to show stakeholders what has been accomplished and find out what they think, gather feedback and to adjust if needed. We can all think of this as the all-important presentation day where we have to present the final results or a key milestone of a work done to some big boss or stakeholders to get their feedback. And finally, the fifth event is the Sprint Retrospective. It is a 3 hours event to discuss what went well during the sprint, what could be improved, and how we can work better as a team. And we can treat this as sort of like our internal meeting after doing all the work to reflect on what went well, what can be improved, and so that we can get feedback from one another internally. So a quick check-in on our productivity knowing all these things is that, are we having these types of meetings regularly? And are we quantifying our work in terms of sprints? Or are our current meetings somehow fitting into one of these definitions of Scrum events in order to inspect progress of the projects, which by the way is also one of the 3 pillars of Scrum, which is to inspect our work and to measure that against the sprint goal, and inspecting often helps to detect problems early. Finally, we'll talk about the 3 artifacts as we have the to-do list and the goals to actually deliver a product. To check if we are actually productively using Scrum, there are 3 artifacts that we must have. The first is the product backlog. It is an ordered list of what needs to be done to improve the product, and the product owner, who is usually our big boss, should manage this product backlog by prioritizing the tasks that needs to be done first and sharing the entire backlog with the entire team. The second artifact is the sprint backlog. This is the list of product backlog items selected to be done in the sprint, and the sprint backlog also includes the plan on delivering the items. In simple terms, this is our detailed to-do list which describes how to get things done step by step. And the third artifact is the increment. It is a useful piece of work that sums up all of the past increments delivered so far. We can think of it as like the version 1.0 of a PowerPoint slide that we just created as an increment. And then when we make some changes and modifications such that it becomes a new version, version 1.1, then that can be counted as the new increment. So to get the productive benefits, we should have these 3 artifacts uploaded into a common space where everyone can see it to avoid misunderstandings. And this is based on the second pillar of Scrum called transparency, which is like everyone can basically see everything. And as soon as there are any unacceptable deviations, anyone has the right to call it out, and the team should course correct immediately. And this is called adaptation, which is adapting to any unforeseen or unexpected changes immediately. And this is the third pillar of Scrum. So the 3 roles, 5 events, and 3 artifacts model are actually all interconnected, and there are many nuances around it. Basically, it describes who does what and when. And there's also the why part, which are the 3 pillars that I just described, and the how is basically the whole Scrum theory itself. On a personal level with our manager in terms of managing our careers, I think Scrum is applicable too, because we can think of our manager as sort of playing like the product owner role to define what success looks like in our role, and we ourselves manage our own career and our own work as the Scrum Master, and our hands are like the developers to deliver the goals. So we should check in often with our manager, as often as daily for 15 minutes in the daily Scrum to sort of like describe what we're doing for the day, and have a regular, longer one-to-one catch-up for at least every week or so that we can plan our work, sort of like a sprint planning, and then we can showcase our work also in a monthly sprint review and discuss any personal improvements on working together as a team in the sprint retrospective. So I'm glad that I got to learn about Scrum, because I believe that we can all become more productive at work, especially when it comes to unexpected changes, which there's plenty of them in the workplace, and we can easily adapt to them and include them in the latest increment. What I just described is really just scratching the surface of the theory, because there are so many nuances in Scrum to learn, as there are exams for each higher level of mastery and area. So I hope that you got a good idea of what Scrum is and you can use it at work. Let me know if you would or would not use Scrum in your career and why, and I look forward to see you in my next video.